Hello and welcome to the Birth Untethered podcast. I'm Shellie, a long-time doula, advocate and former university lecturer.
And I'm Kemi, a badass birth keeper, formerly a UK registered midwife.
Just a couple of rebels with decades of combined experience in pregnancy, birth and beyond, getting together to share wisdom. We exist to equip birth workers, families and seekers of truth with informed choice, not fear. Come as you are, learn what they don't teach. This is the birth revolution and you're all invited.
Welcome everybody from me and from Kemi to this episode. And so I was just seeing a notification come up, but it's fine. It was just telling me something that doesn't matter. Okay, you got a glimpse of my knees there, you lucky people that are watching us.
Oh man!
Trying to get
tantalising people with your knees, though.
So today, what we are going to do is a continuation of stepping deeper into the labour spiral. And before we step into the labour spiral, I just want to re-emphasise the point that we've kind of been making through the last few episodes about physiological birth and the differences between physiological birth and induced labour. That if you are choosing induction, even by, and I'm doing air quotes here, natural methods, okay, you are choosing to opt out of a physiological birth, okay? You are choosing to step away from the safety that your physiology provides you and your baby. You are choosing to step away from the long-term benefits that all of these physiological things playing out in interaction with one another. You're choosing to step away from that. And it's really important to understand that induced birth, even if you've just had a sweep or just downed a bunch of castor oil or whatever it is, that is disrupting the natural physiological mechanisms, and so removing some of those safety nets. And in induced labour, well, let's say in physiological labour, the parasympathetic nervous system has to dominate in order for it to tip over into labour happening. So we have to be in a rest and digest state. With induced labour, medications, etc., override that. So you can be incredibly stressed, frightened, anxious, all things feeling bad in your internal body, and labour still happen if it is induced. In physiological birth, that doesn't happen. So you are removing those safety mechanisms, okay? Or if you're choosing physiological birth, you are choosing to all those natural safety mechanisms, and they're significant. And we're going to talk a little bit about some research today about the significance of physiology in preventing postpartum hemorrhage after the baby's born, which is quite exciting. Read a very good literature review this morning, as you do, 6:30 in the morning, wake up, get straight on the literature reviews.
Yeah,
it's the kind of
totally
birth
normal.
nerd I am. You know what, I spoke to some prospective clients last night, such a lovely couple, really hoping they work with me, I think they will. And you know, they were asking questions, and you know, I'm supposed to be just like a little chemistry call, like, hi, what are you looking for? You know, what kind of birth do you want? Tell me about it. You know, this is how I may be able to help you. We were birth nerding out, and I realised I've been chatting to them over an hour, and I say, okay, you've just stopped me going. You're asking me really, really interesting questions. I was like, I better let you have an evening. But they were very sweet. They were enjoying themselves. They wanted to be satisfied. They weren't just sitting there going, we want to leave. Can we leave? Can we go now? Can we step away? Step away from the birth nerd. Step away. Oh, bless. So I suppose what we should start with is that we've kind of been in the last few episodes dipping our toes out of labour, dipping in, dipping out, and we've been having a very normal physiological transition into labour actually beginning, actually cycling upwards. You know, we've dipped in here, we've dipped in there, and that's very much like physiological labour can be sometimes. You know, you can have some contractions and things going on for hours, for days, for weeks, before you would ever even be considered by medical professionals to be in proper labour. But when people say things like that in a really derogatory way, what they're just demonstrating is their lack of understanding of physiology. you know, because those contractions that are happening before things are ramping up are really important. They're squeezing your baby to help them to tuck their chin down. Yeah, you can all at home understand why this is important very easily, and you can see this on the video. But if you take your hands and put them around the back of your head, can you feel you can touch your hands, your fingers together? That's the part of the baby's head that we want coming into the pelvis first, because it's small. If your baby's head is looking extended like this, can you see that it then goes around the massive top part of your head? So it's the difference between this and this, trying to fit through your pelvis. So if you don't have those initial like little contractions that are helping the baby to tuck and then be able to move more easily, because they can move more easily when they're flexed than when they're extended, you know, you're interrupting that. So we don't want to interrupt that. We want those little surges. We want those little things that are creating more prostaglandin release. And the prostaglandin release then increases the sensitivity of your oxytocin receptors and makes labour more efficient. We're getting the prostaglandins changing the cervix, and so the cervix is softening, and then it's easier for it to dilate when it's ready. All those lovely, perfect things happen. So there are different descriptions of how people kind of like classify labour into stages, and really it's a man-made thing. It's just a continuation of pregnancy to birth to after birth. But, you know, classifications in industrialized medical complexes seem essential to them because it's a conveyor belt system, isn't it? So if they deem that you are not in proper labour, which we know they're deeming of it by vaginal examination, is not effective, it's not accurate, it doesn't accurately predict when you're going to have a baby, but they think it does. That dismissal of your innate knowledge of feeling like I need to be in my safe place now because I need to, you know, feel safe so that labour can happen. And that feeling of wanting to be where you need to be, of wanting to nest, of wanting to feel safe and secure is one of the very important first parts of labour, that separation part. Mm-hmm. So you're separating yourself from your busy normal life so that you can find somewhere safe to be able to shut down your neocortex. You don't want to have to be talking to people. Your body needs to shut all of that down so that the base part of the brain can then get things going. So it's really normal to have, like, initially adrenaline, excitement. Yeah? Adrenaline isn't just bad, it does good things as well. Yeah. You're excited about the baby coming. You can then get organised. You can call the babysitter, get the partner home from work, or to pick up the essential after birth meal on the way back, or whatever it is that you're feeling you need to find your safe place. It gives you a chance to do that adrenaline. And then when everything feels settled, when you feel, okay, everything's in place now, then your body and your nervous system can relax enough, and that oxytocin spiral can begin building, can begin getting stronger, can begin helping to move the baby down, to get the baby to press down more onto those oxytocin receptors lower down, which increases the oxytocin more and creates things to, to dilate the cervix, to build the fundus, to push your baby down like a coffee plunger, all those wonderful things, whilst you're getting this slow building of your oxytocin, your slow building of your endorphins. So you're getting used to the sensations. Your body is having time to adapt to these changes that are happening in your uterus, that if it's your first baby, your uterus has never done before. So you don't want to be like wham, 0 to 100, because it's very shocking. The system, it's difficult. The body does what you can manage. And if actually you start to think, I can't manage this is a bit much, you get a neural feedback loop that slows things down and gives you a bit of a break. Or if someone comes into your space, your body's like, is this person safe to have a baby around? I'm going to check in. And it'll slow down and wait and see, is this person in my room quiet, sitting in the corner, respectful? Are they bringing good energy to my space? Or are they infringing my human rights and making me feel uncomfortable? You know, who you have in your birth space is really important, because if your body doesn't feel safe, it's not failure to progress because there's something wrong with your body. Your body is innately telling you, this person is not safe to have a baby around. I don't know what they're going to do to the baby, but it doesn't feel good. My intuition is telling me they're not a good person to have in my space. That's what happens in earlier parts of labour. And it's a really important safety mechanism. Okay, Kemi, you've got to say something now. I've been talking too much.
Oh my gosh, like I just adore listening to you talk about this, you know, and you're a birth physiologist. I heard Michel Adant talk about that once, address himself as that, and I often address myself as that too, but you surely are. It's a joy to listen. And the thing is, some people are brainwashed, and with their frontal brain, neocortex, they make decisions. So they'll say things like, well, I'm definitely safer in hospital, but your body always keeps a score and will tell you otherwise. So even though you've convinced yourself, well, and maybe your partner's convinced you that you're safer in hospital, your body will surely respond with slowing down the labour, or the gaps between surges becoming longer, or they're becoming more ineffective or shorter. So yeah, I'm just really enjoying listening to how this beautiful mind is expressing this, and I really hope you all are listening too. The thing is, obviously, what I have to express, it can be very confrontational. Most of y'all are brainwashed and you believe lies and you don't ask for the evidence, and so you are being coerced, deceived into situations where your body expresses the truth, which is, I can't really progress, I'm not safe, or I'm being interrupted, there's too many noises, there's somebody screaming down the corridor, there's an emergency bell every 20 minutes. And yeah, people obviously find me very confrontational when I express this, but when you subject yourself to that kind of environment and the responses that your body will quite rightly make to it, what you're doing is you're increasing the discomfort for the baby. You're increasing the insult to the baby. The very baby that you want to seek safety for is actually being exposed to a far more difficult labour, because you're making your choices based on malinformation. I'm not even going to say misinformation, bad information. And it's your responsibility as parents to do better.
Yeah, I think that the medical model really has lost the reverence for the magic of birth and just the amazing innate capacity of the body. Call it divine design or cosmic design, or whatever religion or not that you have. The physiological processes are absolutely amazing, and in order for labour and birth to work well and for that physiology to function, we have to slip into a liminal state. So it's a state between places, and I think one that most people can relate to, a liminal space, is thinking about that time just before you fall asleep, where your mind is sort of like thinking over things. And I don't know about you, but I come up with basically all my best ideas in those moments where I'm not in my head thinking, I need to get that on the shopping list, that I've got to clean that cobweb that I saw over there. Oh, I have to remember this for Seb, I have to do this for Si, I've got a call here, da, 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 da. In the day when you've got this massive mental load sitting on your brain. And that mental load in pregnancy includes, the doctor told me this, this was really dangerous, and they added this fear and they added that fear, and all these are going around in your brain. And what happens in labour is that you sink into this liminal space where actually those things go away. Your oxytocin and your endorphins that are increasing adapt the way that your brain is responding to things and help you to sink into that relaxation, because your brain knows that when you're in that relaxed, altered, trance-like state, you are more instinctive, that you will just move the way you need to move when your baby needs it, that you will reach out for things that you need, or you will reach in for things you need. Yeah, reaching inwards. A lot of people describe that in physiological birth, that they felt this reaching inwards into their body and could really connect with what was happening, and that helped them just focus on their breath and work with it. A lot of other people describe it as that they go outside of their body to go and bring their baby's soul to them, just bring it down for when the birth happens. So that's where the magic happens, in that space. And just like if you are falling asleep and in that lovely space, if someone goes, well, what was your date of birth then? When did you last have a wee? Can I just check your blood pressure now? I'll tell you what, can you just lie? No, I know you're comfortable like that, but actually I just need you to lie on your back in this very uncomfortable position. Open your legs. Let me just put my fingers in your vagina and rummage around for a little bit. If you were trying to sleep in that state and someone did that, you would no longer be in that magic. You no longer have that connection to the divine, that connection to, the magic of birth, basically. And that's what happens when people are very medicalized in their birth thinking, when they're not respecting the amazing things that your body and baby are doing to make it safe. It makes it unsafe, just someone asking you a question in labour sometimes. Yeah, interrupting the flow. You need that flow. And there's been quite a lot of research in that kind of flow state and showing that it is far superior at home. It doesn't happen so much in hospital. And we know that it doesn't happen in the same way in induced birth. So people may get oxytocin release endogenous, so inside from the body, oxytocin release from the brain, and they may get endorphin release, but the levels are nowhere near what you see in a physiological birth. So your instinct is not the same. So in a physiological birth, people get in all kinds of positions instinctively in their birth, like move their pelvis in ways that their baby needs to come through. And that doesn't happen so much in induced birth. And I don't know if you've noticed, Kemi, but I've really noticed this difference between witnessing people physiologically birthing and those with induction, who often, when people with induction are much more conversational, especially if they've got an epidural in, because that feedback mechanism is completely blocked. So they're just on their phone playing Angry Birds. They're not even thinking about their baby and what their baby might need in that moment. They're just completely disconnected in that way. And they tend to just have no idea what to do. I don't know how to move. I don't know what position to get in. I don't know what to do. And this is not because people are dumb. It's not because they're stupid anyway. It's because that connection has been lost. They can't intuit what their body needs. And that is really important for safety. And I think actually is one of the reasons that people then go on to need assistance to birth their babies with forceps, with ventouse, with episiotomies, because they're not just moving how, sometimes it just takes like shifting a buttock a few centimeters and a baby comes out in a physiological birth. And you see it in videos of physiological birth where people are there and then they just do that with their leg. They're not thinking about it. And I've recorded many births and people say to me afterwards, did you notice that weird thing I did? I put my foot up over there. I don't even remember doing that. I just did it. And it makes it happen. So you don't get shoulder dystocia so much. You don't get, the issues that we see in hospital.
Well, fortunately, I haven't seen many induced labours. I did see some during my training and before I left the services, once I was on the register. I've seen a lot more physiological birth. I mean, that's mostly all I see. And the births that seem more difficult are the one where the woman won't let go of thinking. So that's
struggling to slip into the liminality.
So those will be by far the most challenging, or end up being the ones that are transferred. With Grace, I acknowledge that I know a lot more about assisting women to prepare. So in recent years, I've hardly seen a woman requiring transfer for assistance. But in the earlier days, where I hadn't quite nailed all the different ways in which preparation can assist, where we just bimbled along, you would end up with a woman in labour who may have been really trying to relax into her parasympathetic and her, primal brain, but she, it's chicken and the egg. She was aware that there was something not quite clicking together, so she couldn't relax into it, if you get what I mean. And so then it spirals. So, I became very much more interested in what are the patterns of the women that have this spontaneous, physiological, beautiful unfolding into the flow state, carrying a baby out of her. And by far, we've got things like, we'll talk about them in other episodes, etc., like hypertoned pelvic floor, or a partner who's in his forebrain completely and has probably said a lot of things in the pregnancy to work against this birth happening the way it needs to, because it's this continuum. I feel that our society isn't sufficiently aware that everything that happens leading up to conception and through pregnancy will have an effect on the labour, birth and postpartum. And I think I became more aware of that. So like, you know, the portion of physiology that we're talking about today, how that unfolds could relate to something that was said to the woman by her mother when she was 12 years old. You know, I can really see how it all fits together. So, yeah, there's a lot more work that needs to be done, I think, prior to the labour and birth unfolding, which will have a beneficial effect on how labour and birth unfolds.
Yeah, and I think understanding it, so spending time with someone who understands physiology, so having antenatal education with somebody who specialises in physiology, it really then helps prepare you to understand what you need to do to be able to let go of that thing, whether it be through prayer, whether it be through meditation, whether it be through listening to hypnobirthing track, whether it be through listening to music, because that's the thing that helps you let go, you know, whether it be that you've got your favorite food that when you eat it, it just makes you, you know, it's like using all of the senses to help your body to relax in that way. And, you know, I think that's why research very clearly shows that antenatal education that is separate from institutional organisations is so far superior to facilitating physiological birth, because you know, when I speak to couples that have done the NHS antenatal care, basically they're just petrified of birth because they just scaremonger people into saying, well, you just need to accept what the doctors and the midwives say, they know best, rather than going, well, actually your body knows best. You may be offered these things. They may be the right thing in the moment. They may not, because actually nobody knows better what's going on in your body than you. And you have the final and ultimate decision. So making, and it's not even giving power. It's making people realise they have power. It's making people wake up.
Reminding
to the fact that
them
they are the ones. Yeah.
Yes.
They know better than everybody else. They know better than everyone else.
Honestly. And can I just bring in the screw analogy again? Because I need to do it with every episode.
I love that.
When you've got this screw, right, for anyone, because I'm the flat pack queen, so, you know, I was always putting stuff up, etc. When you've got a screw and you reach a certain part of screwing the screw down with your screwdriver, and it's getting more and more difficult and harder, and then it comes to a stop, what you will normally find fixes it is undoing the screw again and then lining it up properly, and then it will just use the thread, go all the way down, voila, right? However, we can't be doing that in the middle of labour and birth. Often the woman may be tired, despondent, her feelings don't match what her body's trying to do, and so the birth just becomes more and more difficult. The people around her, if they don't trust the birth process or don't understand the physiology, will try and pound her through. We can't move the screw beyond this point. Let's get a hammer, bang, bang, bang. That's who you're giving yourself to. Whilst if somebody who understands and respects the process might say, do you know what? Probably you need to just lie down on your side, have a good cry and go to sleep, right? So that's an understanding and respect for the process, that she can reset her hormones, so that the baby can do a little wiggle, just like what Shellie was showing you earlier, especially if you could see us on Patreon, where the sweet spot is for the baby to align their head with the chin tucked in, flexed position for the baby's head, to enable the whole labour and birth to click together more easily than trying to get this baby with the deflex head to do the same thing. It's not going to work the same. So the respect isn't just a nice thing to have. The respect facilitates the safest, most efficient birth for the woman and the baby, in caps, and the baby. When we're submitting to all these things to try and drive the labour on because the beginning of it wasn't optimized, it wasn't spontaneous, so it's not efficient, you're doing all that to the baby's head, the skull with the brain in it. That's what you're allowing to be driven through you with sledgehammers.
Yeah, and if you've had an artificial rupture of membrane, so the membranes have ruptured well before they would usually in a physiological birth, the baby's then pressing down on a firm cervix. You know, they're not cushioned by that cushion
By the
of fluid between the
forewaters.
head, yeah, by the forewaters, and so they get far more kaput, swelling
Yeah,
happening on the head because they're
yeah.
they're then being pounded by these stronger artificial oxytocin contractions into a cervix that's not yet pliable,
It's not
and so
ready because
it's
you've had
damaging.
someone
Yeah,
wiggling around in there trying to prime it, but the actual connective tissues in the cervix and everything have not been optimized to slide open, to thin and open. So you're asking for your baby to be pounded against a firm cervix. That's their skull with their brain in it.
yeah. It's so multifaceted, isn't it? There's so many complex things that come in, and I suppose that's why we've been talking for so many episodes about it, because we're
Yes.
like throwing things in and then circling back and throwing things in. We're in this spiral of oxytocin, adrenaline building up, and we get in labour this when we are able to fall into that relaxed state, into that liminal phase, and things really move on in a positive oxytocin spiral towards the birth of the baby. We often reach a transitional phase. Okay, and this really is happening when the nature of the contractions is changing. So initially, like I showed you in the previous episode, we've got this contraction at the top of the uterus, that's this drawing up of the fundus, and it's drawing up and thinning out the cervix so that it can pull over the head like the polar neck jumper of the baby. And we get to a point where actually that opening is enough. So some people it's 10 centimeters, some people it's a different amount. Actually, the amount it opens is the size of the baby's head that's coming through. It's not just a standard number. Yeah. And when we get to that point, the uterus is then changing its function from this drawing up to open out the cervix, to thin the cervix, to a pushing down of moving the baby, the placenta, everything, the amniotic fluid, if it's still intact, everything downwards.
Yeah.
And I think this is an important point, because often people are told, oh, your labour's not progressing because your cord's too short. Well, the placenta, the baby, and the cord move down like this. So unless your cord is shorter than your vagina, it's not going to prevent the birth of your baby, basically. So it's often blamed. Poor cords, they're blamed for lots of things, aren't they? We get blames that babies are not tolerating labour because there's a knot in the cord. Well, knots in cords are absolutely fine. And you've got this amazing water jelly. If you've got a knot in the cord, you can literally just slide it up and down like that, because it stops stops the compression happening. It's not what's causing the problem. What's causing the problem is the synthetic oxytocin that you're introducing, that is making contractions come so fast that the mother and baby are not having a chance to rest, and so they're becoming hypoxic. They're running out of their reserves because they're not allowed that natural rest. And sometimes when we hit this transitional phase, when we get to this full dilation, and it can become very intense at that point, because the body releases adrenaline as a natural response. It's like, okay, well, we're nearly fully open to let this baby out. This woman is high as a kite on all these wonderful oxytocin and endorphins. They're floating off, finding their baby in the ether. We actually need them to come back to where they are in reality. In the real world, not in this ethereal, beautiful world that they're currently in. We need them to come back to check in. Are these people safe around me? Am I in a safe environment to have my baby? So it's fully intentional by your body that things feel tough at that point, because it's sobering you up. It's literally a metaphorical slap in the face, cold bucket of water, sobering you in the moment. Are these people safe? Am I safe? Can I now start pushing out this baby? And if the answer is no, then you can get a stop. If the answer is, well, do you know what? That opening up was a bit tough. I need a bit of a rest. The baby needs a bit of a rest. It'll stop. And you will have a rest and be thankful phase. Is this a problem? No. Is your body broken? No. Is your body saying, I need a chill? I just need a chill? Yes. It's working perfectly. It's perfectly, normally, physiologically wonderful. And if your response when you come in back into the space from floating off finding your baby, am I safe? Are these people okay? Very quickly your oxytocin rises again and you feel relaxed and okay, and your endorphins rise again, and you can cope with the intensity of contractions that may be happening. Because as the baby's pressing down into the lower part of the uterus, into the top of the vagina, it's pressing onto the sacral plexus, you're getting this neurological hormonal feedback loop, which is called a Ferguson reflex. And it can exponentially increase the oxytocin contractions very rapidly and can create a rapid, like, bam, 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 contractions one after another. Yeah, if your body and baby are okay and can cope with that, it can happen, and birth can then happen quite quickly. Sometimes what happens is that when we get a pushing phase, actually the contractions space out quite a lot, because the baby is coming through a very tight part of the pelvis, part of your vagina. They are being really much more compressed than they have been floating about in the uterus. And so the placenta is contracted. Everything's contracted down more. Remember, the fundus is shrinking down. Everything is squeezed more. And so it's more intense. It's a more intense hypoxia than when there's more space in the uterus before it's really shrinking down. And so the body naturally makes bigger gaps so that your uterus can recover and you don't get too much of a lactic acid buildup and discomfort. It gives a break for the baby so the baby can reperfuse and that their brain is okay. And all this squeezing before has created endorphin and oxytocin release in them. It's created cortisol release in them. These tight squeezes are creating more cortisol release, which is, number one, helping their lungs to clear and be ready for breathing. Number two, helping them to become more alert. So just like you've had to come back from the ether, your baby does too. And that's intentional so that when they come out, they can get to meet you. They can see you.
That's right.
Smell you.
Wakes them up.
Their sense smell is so heightened in the first hour of birth. It's the best it will ever be in their life. And their amniotic fluid smells and tastes like secretions from the areola. So when the baby comes out and onto your chest, okay, their vision's not great. It's a bit blurry. Guess what their best focal length is, though? Nipple to your face. That's their best field of vision. So they can just see you, gaze at you, fall in love with you. All that oxytocin. Oh, it's wonderful. And the amniotic fluid, when they come out on it, they will lick their hands, smell their hands, taste that familiar flavour of what they've been living in for the last 9 months, and they can smell the nipple. And your areolas have darkened, so they're like a bullseye. So for that not great vision, that baby's like, ooh, that smells good. What's that? Ooh, I can see the target. Yeah, and they make their little way
to it. Yeah,
make their little way to the target. They're like, bullseye. That's what I want. That's the good stuff. I'm heading there. And they can crawl. They have these amazing innate reflexes that allow them to crawl at birth.
That's right.
Yeah, these reflexes go away again for a time, and then they learn to crawl again. But initially, they have like base brain reflexes that programmed to help them crawl up to the breast. And actually in the Patreon resources, so if you come over and join us on Patreon, I link all of the references that we speak about here, and where I can, I give a clickable link for you to go and read the papers. I've also got links for some really beautiful videos from YouTube of a breast crawl, because if you've never heard of one, you don't know what it is, you've never seen one, well, I tell you what, give yourself an oxytocin hit of a treat. And get some chocolate or something that you love and sit down and watch some breast crawl videos, and they're all linked in those resources because they are just a joy to behold. I mean, just so lovely.
Yeah, seriously, I'm having an absolute oxytocin high right now just hearing you talk about it. And it's something that most people aren't seeing at the moment. And I think if you yourself, regardless of what anyone else is doing around you, you become in pursuit of the good information, the physiology, the magic of childbirth, it will help you stand strong as you prepare to do it yourself. And especially if partners can do it as well, you will stand strong for the mothers who are going to go ahead and do this. It is absolutely spectacular. Carry on. You just got me in a dream state here. So beautiful.
It is so helpful to have that knowledge. And, you know, we know there's over 40 peer-reviewed studies that show that the presence of a doula improves outcomes in birth. And it's not just how you feel about your birth, but how your physiology works and how well you and your baby are after birth. Reduction of injury, massive reduction in cesareans, reduction in hemorrhage, you know, increased breastfeeding, all of these things, because having somebody who can help hold that space, and who does really revere physiology makes it safer for you. It makes it more pleasant. And
It
I
does.
know that birth in hospital is so different to undisturbed birth. It's they're not even comparable in my mind to the way that people feel afterwards, the way that people interact intuitively, instinctively with their babies after. In hospital, it's always like this sigh of relief. Oh, thank God everybody's alive. And oh, we need to check this. We need to weigh this. Do you want to clamp the cord yet? Can we going to weigh the baby now so we can write up the notes? Da, 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 da. All this complete disrespect and disruption of that post-birth transitional time, which is incredibly important for yours and your baby's safety. I mean, I cannot stress how important it is that you are not disturbed in that time, that you just get to gaze at your baby gets to gaze at you, you get to talk to them when their ears are no longer filled with amniotic fluid, so they hear your voice that they recognize for the first time. It calms them. You know, if babies are a bit stressed about being born, and sometimes they really shout about it, they tell you, I've had a really tough time. I was squeezed like I've never been squeezed before. Rah! You know, but if you say, oh, sweetheart, it was tough, wasn't it? Yeah, it was tough for me too. I mean, you've just come through my vagina. So, you know, talk to me about tough stuff, you know, but you're reassuring them. They recognize your voice. They immediately calm. They immediately feel safe and secure.
But whilst if they're taken across to be checked, then they're not near you being that calm, and also being or dwelling in that calm. And also, if you would allow yourselves to observe this, it is spectacular to watch how the baby responds to the mother's, the smell of her breath, the smell of her chest, obviously the oxytocin she's exuding, she's warming the baby from the chest, etc. If once you see it and once you respect it, you will fight for it.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I was just bumped into by another boat there, and that's why I went all like, "Ooh!" Someone just
Were you?
Yeah, that's all right. They're fine. Okay, yeah. So this integration. So when you're so we've got the emergence of the baby. We're kind of jumping backwards and forwards as is the way. When we've got that emergence of the baby,
did you mention the unfolding of the vagina? Can we just can we talk about the unfolding of the vagina and the skull bones sliding over each other? It's called moulding. So the baby's head the shape is changed. It's a beautiful dance between the baby, their skull bones, which are not fixed. They've got none of the spaces between the skull bones have got bone in it yet that fixes them in place, which is a beautiful design. It's obviously designed, but anyway, we won't go there. But so that each of their plates, so particularly the biparietal, which is the two side plates of the skull, they slide over each other because they're not joined. So they slide over each other. And then the occipital bone at the back kind of leans back a bit to accommodate the sliding over of the two parietal bones, and the brain. So the baby's brain changes shape inside of the vault of the skull. But the baby is made for that. In fact, many babies have microbleeds of the brain through that process of moulding. But it's enough, the baby can cope with it, unless the baby has a condition called hemorrhagic disease of the newborn. I reject vitamin K deficiency bleeding. You've all been brainwashed. It's hemorrhagic disease of a newborn. It's a specific disease that a handful of newborns have, okay? So unless a baby has that disease, it can cope with the microbleeds, it can mop it up. The brain can cope with the shape being changed to be accommodated within a skull vault that is temporarily changed. So we've got those lovely skull bones temporarily changing as the head is pushed by the piston-like action of the uterus to unfold the rugae, R-U-G-A-E, rugae, it's the folds of the vagina. So the folds of the vagina work very well on if you're having penetrative sex, the person penetrating you will very much enjoy your vagina because of its folds. But when the
Ribbed for his
baby's
pleasure.
using, but thankfully, this clever design that we have, those folds unfold, and the baby's head is unfolding it. And so the shape of the vagina adapts to the moulded head of the baby. And then because we're so beautifully made, the folds come back again. Otherwise, we'd all have one child, literally. If there's no reason there's no fun for the person entering us. It'll only happen once, right? But we're so beautiful and well designed that the rugae come back into place. The folds come back, as your healing continues. And it's not very long after the baby's born either. So I just wanted to talk a bit about the moulding, what happens to the brain inside, and the unfolding of the vagina for the baby to get out. Really efficient design.
Yeah, and in the physiological birth, you've had that shutting down of the baby's brain so that they can cope with that moulding and those changes. If you have started the labour early and they haven't had that, then it's more traumatic for their brains. And with this unfolding, you get this pushing down, bobbing back of the baby's head, pushing down, bobbing back. So it's really normal for a baby's head to do bob, 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 just gradually stretching, gradually opening, coming down, resting in between. And we want those rests in between the surges because it means that when the uterus is relaxing between contractions, and in physiological birth it relaxes significantly, in induced birth sometimes there's not enough time for it to fully relax, and so it stays contracted down. So we're getting this pushing down and then it stays stuck there. It doesn't actually release. So that's a problem both for perfusion and getting blood back to your baby and your uterus and stopping you getting like really massive lactic acid buildup that it can't then recover from because the next contraction's pounded on top of it. But it also means that the baby's got less space to be able to shift and wriggle for them to be able to come out. So we'll do another episode really about how babies turn as they come through. But basically, we spoke about it briefly in the last episode, I think. So the baby's head needs to turn to come through that narrow part of the pelvis. So do their shoulders. Shoulders wider than head. Yeah, we can fold them over so they become less of a diameter. Okay, but the baby has to rotate in most people for the shoulders to then be able to come out. And if we have got this uterus fully contracted and not allowing space, it's difficult for babies to make that rotation. So it can make shoulder dystocia more likely. So we want the pauses for the baby to be able to move and wriggle. And for most babies, they're bobbing down, coming back up, bobbing down, coming back up. By a certain point, they get their head around the arch of the pubic symphysis, so their head doesn't go back up quite so much anymore. But they're then just gradually emerging out of the vagina in a, if you let your uterus do the pushing in a nice slow way, you don't need to be pushing down at that point. If you're getting that kind of like really intense, ring of fire, burning sensation, some people like the feeling of it. I can't remember who it was I was listening to who said that they loved that feeling. It might have been Sam Gadsden. On her, she's got these wonderful courses, actually, these little what are they called, workshops. I've linked them in the PDFs actually because they're so brilliant. She does one that's based on her affirmations, which is just superb, that I've linked in there, and also one where she's got this lovely she makes these beautiful beaded light catchers that represent birth, and she talks through what all the beads represent and things. So I've linked those in our notes because they're such a lovely representation speaking about the physiology of birth. And I think it might have been her that said that she just actually quite enjoys that stinging sensation, that kind of intense perineal feeling. So if you can just let your uterus then push your baby, you don't have to do anything. The uterus will just push the baby out nice and slowly at that point, just to allow that last final bit of really big stretching for the baby's head to come out, and it helps reduce damage to the perineum. And that's the other thing about this contraction and release. When you squeeze a sponge in the bath, you squeeze most of the water out of it, don't you? And then you let go and it fills back up with water. You can imagine that, squeezing a sponge in the bath, letting it go. If you squeeze the sponge and keep it squeezed, you don't get new water coming in. And this happens with the perineum and makes the tissues more damageable, more friable, makes it more easily for them to tear. So if you're not getting a rest between your contractions and allowing that reperfusion, it makes tears more likely. Again, why they're more likely, partly why one of the many reasons why they're more likely in an induced birth, because it's not getting that chance to reperfuse, have new blood, and then, keep that circulation going, if that makes sense. So yeah, you get this bobbing, and then usually the baby's head will come out, and then you'll get a pause. Okay, and sometimes a pause between contractions at that point is going to be 4 minutes. Might be 1, might be 2, might be 3, might be 4, might be even longer. The uterus is reperfusing, the placenta's reperfusing. Then the baby will have a wiggle. Yeah. And I don't know about you, Kemi, but for me, I was like, felt like when that happened, Step was like doing a little samba in there, like, whoa. And I was just like, baby, please stop moving. But it's them like wriggling around. Yeah, so the shoulders can come out. But that was an intense feeling. I was glad that didn't last too long, because I was like, baby, can you stop your wriggle? He was like, no, I can't stop wriggling. I need to wriggle to get my shoulders out.
I need to get out. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
We also did we mention I hopefully in the last episode how it's no accident that babies' lips are about an inch from your anus when they're born.
No, we did not notice that. Please speak about that, Kemi, because it's very important. I've got the pictures of it in the PDF actually. If you join us on Patreon, I've made some beautiful drawings. Okay, yes. When I say beautiful, I mean my drawing skills not the best, but I've made some little drawings.
They're beautiful.
And one of them does include the poo situation in birth. Yeah. So you should check that out.
You should, and then that links with the whole microbiome situation. Gosh, we're nerds. But anyway, the baby, most babies emerge facing their mother's rectum and anus, and that's so that they've not only picked up the bacterial flora from their mother's vagina, but also from their mother's digestive system via the anus. So that's a really good inoculation of the right kind of flora. No, depending on the mother's health. A lot of people don't mention that either. Mothers really need to optimize their own digestive system and vaginal flora, preferably from before conception, because it's easier to do then, but definitely during the pregnancy, because that's an inheritance to the baby and must not be overlooked. So it's so beautiful, the design again, the way the baby's lips are literally, an inch away from mother's anus, able to acquire her digestive system, bacterial flora. And then the baby's rotated away by up to a quarter by that shoulder movement that Shellie was just talking about. When they have to move their shoulders into the AP axis, anterior posterior axis, to be able to pass through mother's bones to be born and then through her perineum. By the time the shoulders are down the vagina, the baby's two shoulders are usually pressed together in front of them underneath their chin to get through. It's such a beautiful design, honestly, if it was just watched, observed and respected. And then that's how the baby can emerge, with the baby's face facing a thigh, and then the shoulders emerge through the perineum, and that's your baby born. And you can get your hands underneath their armpits and you can bring them towards you. It's something I know sometimes mothers can be a bit like still in a bit of a dream state, or perhaps a bit shocked. But it's really wonderful for either the mother or the partner to be the ones to bring the baby to the mother, remembering that the cord is still attached to the placenta, which is still inside of the woman. So, and please know, when I'm talking about women, I'm also talking about people that don't call themselves women or don't use feminized pronouns, but they are giving birth. I'm also talking about them. You just bring the baby to you, and that's where your baby can stay for 3 hours or more. Yeah, your baby doesn't have to be separated from you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really normal, like Kemi was saying, for people to be a bit shocked and a bit like, oh, or are just amazed at yourself. Like, wow, I just did that. And you very often see this sort of like wide-eyed, you know, like, just pause. Have this natural pause before you then, you know, really scoop your baby up and start looking at them. And that's that like last transitional point of the magic of I'm no longer just responsible for myself. Who's this?
Yeah.
You know, and then you get to
Yeah.
meet them and get to know about them
Yeah.
and have them close to you and have their skin against your skin and have their little hands massaging your body and crawling up towards the breast. And all of these things are important in that physiological dance and that physiological safety, because your baby being skin to skin with you helps them and it helps you. So it calms them because they've been used to listening to your heartbeat, to your digestive system gurgling away, and it's actually pretty loud in the uterus. The decibel level is similar to that of a vacuum cleaner. You're kind of all your farts bubbling around the baby's head, you know, and your aorta and heart sound. It's been loud for them. And so to be on your chest, they can hear it. That's their safe space. You smell like the smell that they're used to. You are safe, you know. And we spoke about the oxytocin receptors on the chest last time. Will warm your baby as needed. They don't need a hat. The research shows that hat doesn't make them their thermoregulation any better. You can just have a warm blanket over the top of the two of you. I made that into a tongue twister somehow. But yeah, just a blanket if you need it. If it's a boiling hot day, you don't need a woolly hat and a blanket.
No,
just
you
on
don't.
your chest, and that's fine.
And just to remind you, because you do all know this, when we have freshly laid babies, what we all want to do is sniff their heads. Everyone, it's standards, right? This is what we know. We know where to go to get a hit that makes the eyes roll
Kemi.
into the back of our heads.
And I'm addicted to sniffing babies.
Oh my word! I know exactly where to go, right? And it's the head. So when you see somebody putting a hat on your baby's head, they're denying you that burst of oxytocin that is beneficial for you and the baby. It's sabotage. There's no other way. And if you've speaking with someone who've let us after their name registered as a birth professional and they don't know that, you need to keep them very far away from you and your baby. It is so obvious why you don't put a hat on a baby. It's very, very clear. There was something else I wanted to add. Please just give me a moment. Give a moment for a senior. I should have brought my notepad to remember. So we were talking about the baby acquiring the microbiome and then the baby being born, and then we're talking about the birth pause. I just really wanted to add, right? So there's that pause. Also, having observed it just so many times, it's almost like a point for recognition. This is what I've observed. The woman, when she's allowed that pause, will look at her baby, like scan her baby's face, and then look at her partner, usually. She'll look at her partner. I honestly think there's something very deep and divine about that. It's almost like a recognition, because you'll see her eyes like pulse with oxytocin when she does it. That needs to be allowed. It's like a connection for her after she's been around the world and up to the stars and everything. She's grounding herself when she gets a chance to say,
reintegrating as a new being. Because this is not just a birth of a baby, is it? This is a birth of a family. Birth of you as a parent, as a mother, as a father, as a unit, whatever that unit consists of. And that integration moment is so important. And anybody
for her.
rubbing your baby. Oh, congratulations! Welcome, baby. Oh, it's a baby.
What the fuck? Why are you centering yourself? Sit down and shut up. Somebody actually put it on, they did a post about it, like said, normalise shutting the fuck up when a woman's just met her baby. Can we do that? right? That she needs that time. She needs the silence. The baby only wants to hear the voice of their parents. They don't give a fuck about anyone else in that room. Maybe the nerdy doula or, midwife who's been around for 9 months, they seem to express an interest in us, right? They look at us and say, oh, you're here too. This is nice. But they're interested in their parents. You need to shut the fuck up. Also, while she's doing that, so I've observed that midwives panicking as if they don't understand the physiology, saying, take your baby, take your baby, take your baby, out of the water. No, you don't do that. You instinctively will want to lift your baby out of the water. You're not going to leave your baby down there 10 minutes. You're not, right? But you don't need to be told to do that. You have got time to lift your leg over your baby's cord or whatever needs to be done to position yourself to get your baby. Your baby's got the nutrients and oxygen in their blood coming from the placenta. There's always a third of the placenta being replenished, and that will nourish your baby, even if the placenta is detached from the uterine wall, etc. Bring your baby up. When you're bringing your baby up carefully and slowly because you love your baby, that gives your baby a chance to exhibit a reflex called the morrow. So it's where the baby flashes their arms out like that. You'll see it on, it's like people think it's a shock response or whatever, and sometimes babies may do that and follow it with a cry because when they open their arms out, suddenly it causes lung expansion because the chest is expanded. There's more room for the lungs to expand, and sometimes they'll use that to exhibit a bit of a cry, like if they're having a complaint, like Shellie mentioned earlier about the journey, etc. But all of that needs to be allowed. When you've got a midwife saying, oh, congratulations, what's noise? And then rubbing the life out of your baby, all of that is distracting from those moments. So the birth pause, I'm a huge fan. And again, the disrespect of that can really minimize the benefits to the mother and the baby of being completely undisturbed in those moments.
Yeah, and it reduces the oxytocin at that point, which is dangerous. Firstly, for postpartum hemorrhage. Secondly, for the adaptations that are happening in the maternal brain to make them cope with being a mother. Thirdly, for the oxytocin receptors in the breast tissue and prolactin release for that to happen. So all of those are impacted by disturbance in that period. So this final stage of labour before the placenta is born, is critically important in birth. And a birth hasn't finished. It's that transition from birth of the placenta, then birth of the parents, and it's all happening intertwined in a way that needs to really be respected. And the leading cause of death in birth is obstetric hemorrhage. 72% of deaths is caused by hemorrhage, and that is in part, one of the main reasons for that is introducing synthetic oxytocin which blocks the sufficient production of endogenous, your body's oxytocin, which means that the uterus cannot contract down well. It's too much oxytocin, meaning that the uterus has become saturated and is no longer able to clamp down. It becomes floppy, atonic. It's not able to contract how it needs to. The third one is that it's been pounded so much that the lactic acid build up, it's got tired and it can't work. Another one is that you've induced the labour too early, so there aren't enough oxytocin receptors for it to perform its function safely and birth the placenta. So all of these interventions have compounding things that cause issues. I don't know how many times you've seen a catastrophic hemorrhage, that was required a transfusion and stuff in your practice, Kemi, but I can tell you in 20 years of supporting physiological birth, okay, I've never seen it in a physiological birth ever, never seen a big hemorrhage in a physiological birth ever, and I've supported hundreds of births in person and thousands remotely and in person, and it's not happened. The only one I've ever seen was an unnecessary induction, cascaded. They wouldn't let me move her. They wouldn't let me change position to try to help the baby out. They pulled the baby out with forceps and she got a massive hemorrhage. And when I checked in with the midwife afterwards, because it was quite stressful, and I had to really be quite firm with people and say, you need to calm down. Okay, I know she didn't speak English, but I was like, you need to calm down. Okay, and no, I will not be stepping away from her face with her. I'm holding her baby because I appreciate she may go unconscious. But if she does go unconscious, okay, I want the last thing that she sees to be her baby's face. Not
Yeah.
what they wanted to do was take the baby off and cannulate the baby. The baby was fine, but they wanted to give precautionary antibiotics. And they're like, let's take the baby and cannulate the baby. I'm like, no, if she is in this moment bleeding to potentially a point of death, you're not gonna have her baby screaming in the corner whilst you try to stick an unnecessary at the present moment IV in. No, I said she will be having as much of her baby in her view as possible, and me just reassuringly looking at her going, don't worry about all this nonsense, you just focus on your baby. Yeah. So in
Yeah.
the end, she wasn't traumatized by that experience because she had a calm, centered presence and saw her baby. I checked in with the midwife because I thought, well, maybe she'd be a bit stressed about it because obviously it was a bit hairy. And the midwife just went, oh, well, it happens every day here.
Of course it does. Do you know, this is such an important subject. Do you mind if we do a separate episode on everything
Let's.
third stage?
We're gonna have to continue on. Actually, I was planning for us to do like more on cord and stuff next episode. So yeah, let's absolutely do that because I know that we have to wrap up very soon. I was going to share one thing with you all because I know we spoke about the Ferguson reflex earlier, and sometimes there's this kind of confusion between Ferguson reflex, fetal ejection reflex, and what confuses it more is actually that the fetal ejection reflex is different in animals to what is observed in humans, and what Michel Audin, who coined the term fetal ejection reflex in humans, means by it compared to animal studies. So we described the Ferguson reflex earlier, that you've got this pressure of the baby's head coming down and that creating this positive feedback oxytocin loop via the neurological connection from the uterus to the brain, okay, which is blocked by an epidural. Yeah, this doesn't happen in the same way. And that is different to what Michel describes, which is the fetal ejection reflex, which is he has only witnessed it when birth is undisturbed. And interestingly, he's sat in another room, so there is no male presence in the room, but the mother is undisturbed and only supported by a female knowledgeable attendant if she wants that, or completely alone. He in fact said he hasn't witnessed it if a male partner is present, which I found was very interesting. And I do wonder that if your significant other is there, you've still got that connection to your neocortex to be checking in if they're okay. And that if they're not there, it allows people to release and relax the body a little bit more. I mean, I wonder if you are really connected with a partner, whether it would happen. But Michel said he has not seen it. But I thought that was an interesting point. But he says, I'm going to just read from his article. I'm often asked to clarify the difference between the fetus ejection reflex and the well-known Ferguson's reflex. The Ferguson's is related to mechanical conditions, the pressure of the presenting part on the perineal muscles. A real fetal ejection reflex can occur long before the descent of the presenting part or long after. It can start before complete dilation or after. Usually it does not occur at all because the prerequisite is complete privacy. Okay. I have interpreted this reflex as the effect of a sudden, spectacular reduction in neocortical activity, making it possible the release of a complex hormone cocktail. The release of high levels of hormones of the adrenaline family is suggested by the sudden expression of fear, often a very short episode of fear of death, that precedes the irresistible contractions, and by a sudden tendency to grasp something and to be upright. And I've witnessed that a lot. People will reach out to you and hold on to you.
So that fear, so that keys in with what us nerds were talking about just a little bit earlier, where it was seen in women. There was a study that I will find and send to you, where it was seen in women in war zones. So it depended where they were in the labour would either stop or there'd be a fetal ejection reflex.
If you've reached that critical point.
Yeah, if you've reached that point where, wherever you're holding the baby would not be beneficial for you or the baby, then the baby will be forced out with a fetal ejection reflex, like bang, bang, bang. Whilst if if you were able to stop and find somewhere to hide before the baby's born, then the labour would stop. So whenever I think about the fetal ejection reflex, which I guess because I'm present, I've never seen, I see the Ferguson's reflex efficiently happening 24/7. If a woman's undisturbed and describes that she's had one, then she's had one, a fetal ejection reflex, I'm saying. But I'm quite interested in the role that adrenaline may play in the fetal ejection reflex.
Yeah, so this is seeming like he's describing an internal, like physiological adrenaline release rather than something triggered by fear externally, and it only happens if people are undisturbed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then he's saying so maybe different to what you were, what that person was describing. We'll maybe touch on that in the next episode. Circle back to it in our oxytocin cycle again, which I love. So then without interference, so if there's no stimulation of the neocortex, so literally they reach out and you're there and reassuring and you don't say anything, because if you say anything that triggers the neocortex. There is then a release of high peak of oxytocin, which then creates the contractions and endorphins for an ecstatic state of the mother. Yes, so that's and I just have to read this bit because it really made me laugh. It's so French. I learned from a powerful fetal ejection reflex induced by a cup of champagne. Around 1980, a woman in not yet in hard labour, he describes it here, shared a room in the hospital in Pithiviers in France. Her roommate, who was already celebrating the birth of her baby, gave her a cup of champagne. The unexpected effect was a sudden series of powerful contractions that the second mother's baby was born on the way to the birthing room. My interpretation is that the bubbles sped up the absorption of alcohol, causing an immediate effect on brain activity that other types of wine cannot have. So, did you hear this, ladies? Only champagne. Only champagne's good enough for you. The capacity champagne has to release inhibitions has been widely tested whenever the goal is to create an erotic or not too formal atmosphere. I love that. Have some champagne to relax yourself. It helps in general social interactions and causing a fetal ejection reflex.
And causing a fetal ejection reflex.
I love it. So he said, recently I met Dominique Marquette, an experienced home birth midwife and a native in the famous specialised wine centre in Champagne. When preparing for a home birth, she always suggests that the family keep a bottle of champagne in the refrigerator, occasionally to celebrate the birth afterwards. In fact, now and then, under precise circumstances, she offers a cup of champagne to the woman in labour in order to release inhibitions. The conclusion of such anecdotes and theoretical interpretations is not that labouring women should be routinely offered champagne. In the age of evidence-based midwifery, we must wait for the results of prospective randomised control studies evaluating the ratio of benefits to risks. So could you sign me up for the champagne trial, please?
Yeah, we're in. We're in. You don't need to ask us twice.
Okay, so on that note,
beautiful.
everybody, we better finish up for today. A cheers to you all, and we will see you in the next episode where we will continue our oxytocin spiral and circle back and talk more about the wonders of physiological birth. Bye-bye.
Remember, you can join us over on Patreon for extra resources with every episode and a growing community of physiological birth rebels. This is the revolution, and you're all invited. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and may not reflect those of the hosts. This content does not replace professional medical guidance.